Hello, everyone. I'm Mary Kay Devine, Director of Community Initiatives here at Women Employed. I'm joined today by Kerry Thomas, the Associate Director of Chicago Jobs Council, and Becky Raymond, the Executive Director of the Chicago Citywide Literacy Coalition. It is our pleasure to welcome you to today's meeting of the Pathways to Careers Network, and we're thrilled for the opportunity to collaborate with our partner organization, the Citywide Literacy Coalition. Before we dive into today's meeting agenda, I will review some webinar housekeeping items with all of you. So, as I've said in the chat window, the sidebar that appears along your screen, your phone lines will be muted until there's an opportunity for discussion. At that point, I will give you instructions on how to unmute your lines and mute your lines. We realize folks are dialing in from a host of locations, probably including some cell phones and cars, as well as offices and homes. And so to avoid barking dogs and the sound of the wind hitting your windshield, we keep you on mute. We do have a very full agenda today and some really meaty discussion that we're looking to have with you so that we will allow extensive participation, because that is the whole point of today's engagement session. Now, the chat window that I mentioned before, it's in the bottom of your left-hand corner of your screen, and this will remain open and active throughout the meeting. You can type questions to me or comments, points of clarification, anytime during the presentations. You can continue to use the chat feature after the presentations, but you can also use the button at the top left to, quote, raise your hand. Then I will know that you're interested, and I will make sure to call on you and tell you how to unmute your line. Today's engagement session will also involve various polling questions, so we will be seeking very specific input, and we'll provide instructions to you if it's multiple choice, multiple response, ranking, etc. As you heard when you're entered, the webinar is being recorded. We will send you a link to the recording and slides after today's meeting so you'll have access to the content. Last, we will have a participant survey. Like any good meeting, there's a survey at the end. Today's survey, though, is very specific about content. So it's not how well we did. Hopefully we'll do well. This is about you and the materials that you would want to pass along as part of the engagement opportunity to give your feedback to OCTAE, formerly OVE. And we'll talk more about that at the end of the session. But please stay on the line so that we can get your input all the way through to the participant survey. The last item of housekeeping is that if you need help, you can definitely send me chat, but we strongly encourage you to directly contact our webinar service provider. They're fantastic, excellent customer service, and they will pick up on a dime. Their number is in the chat window, and I'll also give it to you now. It's 1-800-843-9166. 1-800-843-9166, and they'll be able to help with connectivity issues either with your phone or your web. So, without further ado, we want to start today's conversation specifically with Illinois' urgent need to improve adult transitions into college and careers. We're going to take a few moments at the beginning of today's meeting to tell you about the Pathways to Careers Network. By 2020, 67% of Illinois jobs will require a college degree or certificate, yet 3 million adults, 3 million Illinois adults do not have education beyond high school. As a result of this skills gap, out of 100 future jobs, 24 could go unfilled. Almost a quarter of the jobs could go unfilled due to the skills gap. To address the skills gap, Women Employed and the Chicago Jobs Council launched the Pathways to Careers Network in 2012 as an initiative to increase college and career success for adult learners with low basic skills. The Pathways to Careers Network advances the missions of both of our organizations. For 40 years, Women Employed has been mobilizing people and organizations to expand educational and employment opportunities for America's working women. And for 30 years, the Chicago Jobs Council has worked with its members to ensure access to employment and career advancement opportunities for people living in poverty. Our partner organization today, the Citywide Literacy Coalition, has spent the last 10 years bringing together a group of adult education providers as a coalition. Their services include technical assistance and resource sharing to their membership. So, we always like to confirm the status of your membership to the Pathways to Careers Network. There's no dues, there's no sign up. We just want to make sure that you're on our email list so that we can share content with you that's relevant to the advocacy and the policy issues we're all interested in, and to make sure we can invite you to future webinars like today. Take a moment and let us know. Do you think you're already on our list, or should we just sign you up today? Great. Thanks, everybody. If you haven't hit the button, we're closing the poll. Okay, I'm going to hand it over to Kerry Thomas, the Associate Director of the Chicago Jobs Council.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm glad that we have a lot of people signed up for this very important engagement session. So we're hosting today's webinar to collect feedback on an important report that was released from the OECD, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. At the end of last year, they did an analysis of data about, an international analysis of data of adult skills. And then at the end of the year, the U.S. Department of Labor's, now it's called the Office of Career, Technical, and Adult Education, OCTAE, asked them to do a report specifically about some more detail, some more specific information about the adult skills in the U.S. workforce. So that report was released, and it showed that there's 36 million adults in the United States that are below average in 3 areas of basic skills: numeracy, literacy, and the ability to solve problems in a technology-rich environment. We wanted to highlight 3 things about that report. So we have a very large low-skilled population in the United States. Our performance on literacy is particularly poor. I'm going to show you some information in a second. Minorities are disproportionately represented in the low-skilled population in the United States. And the data really shows that we are not integrating immigrants well into education and the ability to perform well on these tests. So the first bit of data here shows how U.S. adults rank internationally in terms of numeracy. And you'll see not only are we below average, but we are well below average. And there's a link here, and there's a link at the end for more detailed information on some of this data. Then next you'll see the slide that shows where the U.S. adults are on literacy. So again, particularly poor and well below average. Finally, this is just the information graphic that many of you are sort of familiar with this issue, the relationship between skills, especially basic skills, and success in the labor market. So just showing that those below high school have an unemployment rate of 10% and so on. And when you have a bachelor's degree or higher, it's 3%. So really showing the relationship between skills and labor market success. I think the other thing that we wanted to point out that's really important that OECD pointed out for OCTAE is that there's some important opportunities for us in the American workforce. So our adult workforce has a high rate of participation, higher than other countries internationally, in education and training programs. So that's an opportunity to take advantage of. We also have a high percentage of low-skilled adults that are employed. So that is also something to take advantage of in terms of helping people to upgrade their skills. And then lastly, their data also showed that skills are highly rewarded in the U.S. labor market. So there's really a direct connection between skills and employment rates and wages. Now I'm going to turn it over to Becky, who's going to tell you more about our engagement process.
Thanks, Kerry. Good afternoon, everyone. So the U.S. Department of Education, OCTAE, is really seeing this report as a rally cry. And so in response to the report, they have launched an effort called Time to Reskill. And they've gone around the country nationally for regional listening engagements. And they're welcoming online feedback via their website, timetoreskill.org. And they're encouraging conversations like this one that we're having right now to get feedback from the field on what could improve the U.S.'s performance on a study going further for adults. So the most important thing is for us to get on the record with ideas that we have that will improve the situation in terms of strategies, methods, techniques. What can we do? We want to be very concrete in our feedback today. So OCTAE has been transcribing meetings that they've been hosting, and we will compile conversations and polls from today and put that directly into the U.S. Department of Education. So the goals for our engagement session today are tied directly to the materials that we've gotten from OCTAE in terms of what specific feedback they're looking to include in the national strategy. So you'll have an opportunity to participate via polls and discussion questions, and our conversation will go around 4 main themes: strengthening the link to the economy, setting priorities, expanding and scaling opportunities, and improving the quality of teaching and instruction. So at the end of this webinar today, CJC, along with Women Employed and the Coalition, we will combine the input, the feedback, with feedback that we got from an in-person group session earlier this month. And we will submit that directly to the U.S. Department of Education via their website. From here, we'll dive right into our first topic of strengthening the link with the economy, and I'll turn it back over to Kerry.
Thanks, Becky. So we're going to start out with a poll. So this is an area that OCTAE wants to know a lot about how individuals engage employers and link their programs with what's happening in the local labor market. So this poll, as you can see before you, it's a multiple choice poll, and you can give multiple responses. So please indicate if you've had any experience with engaging employers in the following ways. We're going to leave this poll open for a while, so pick as many of these as apply. The last 2 are slightly distinct other categories, so other occupational training program or other adult ed employer strategies. Those are very general categories. So if you select one of those, or if you select both of those, please send a chat message to Mary Kay so that we can make sure that some more detail so give a little bit more detail or give an example of what you do in the chat message to Mary Kay, so we will have that on the transcript of this session today. So again, this is a multiple choice, multiple response poll. We're going to leave it open for a bit to make sure we get as many responses as possible. And if you select an other, send us a chat message that gives a little bit more detail about what that is, or an example of what you've done to engage employers through that strategy. Okay, we're going to close the poll, and we'll all see the results. There you go. We got a lot of bridge programs out there. Why am I not surprised? All right. Okay, now we're going to move on to the discussion portion. On this slide, you'll see kind of the overarching question that Ove has put out there. So how does your experience as part of a Career Pathways program, so whether it is a bridge program or some other occupation or education or skills program, how does your experience running that program, partnering with that program, participating in that program inform how we engage more employers so we can get their support for services for low-skilled adults? And specifically, we want you to describe your experiences with successfully engaging employers. So does anybody want to jump in and give us an example?
If you have an example, please hit *6 6. Star 6 on your keypad will unmute your line. If we hear multiple people logging on, just use common courtesy and we'll have a conversation. Star 6 will unmute your line. If you make your point and you want to go back on mute, Star 7.
So one of the things that we have heard from OCTAE and from the folks who are helping them put together the National Action Plan is that what goes in the National Action Plan needs to be on the record. So on the record at one of the listening sessions or feedback through their website, which this will be included in. And so we can't assume that all the great programming that's had been in existence for a long time will be on the record. So even if there's something that you think that we already know about, like a lot of folks do work with employers around contextualizing curriculum, doing job shadowing, things like that. We want to make sure that OCTAE hears about that.
I'm wondering, Mickey O'Kearns and Pat Thomas, you both submitted some specific ideas in chat. Mickey or Pat, would you unmute your phone line on Star 6? I'd love to hear more about, Mickey shared that they used internships successfully where employers agreed to host students, and Pat Thomas offered the example that employers developed content for individuals to meet the needs of their jobs. An example that Pat offered was a Hispanic gentleman moving into a foreman role needed to improve his writing skills. So Mickey or Pat, do you want to unmute your line using Star 6, and then you could share more details with us? To respond. I haven't seen anybody come across in the chat. Another way I would ask, so on the last poll, I'm going to go back to the poll really quickly, and we can see that 75% of the respondents, it will not unmute. Okay. Okay, I am just going to go into what might be the Wild West of webinars, and I'm going to unmute all the lines. So if you're washing dishes or your dog is barking, you've been warned. Okay, I'm going to unmute the lines, and let's see what we hear.
The conference has been unmuted.
All right, folks. No washing dishes, no barking dogs. Pat Thomas, can you hear us? I think we can hear you.
Yes. Ways that we have engaged our make the content. And one thing that has
Pat, you're breaking up every other word.
thing that has been successful has years in your panel explaining engaging them any way they're a critical. I would also suggest that by coming across.
It's very hard to hear you, unfortunately, Pat. I feel like you're saying so many good things. I've heard panels and engaging and all the right words, and they're just not forming sentences.
Okay, I will just put it in the chat room.
Okay, fantastic. And I ask folks, you know, if you are in a spot where you don't want to, or you're not able to speak up, be as specific as possible in the chat. In addition to recording today's session, what we can do is literally download a transcript of chat, and we'll include that. Okay. All right. So we'll download the transcription to chat and include that with our submission of feedback to OCTAE. But the lines are unmuted. So is there anyone else that wants to provide very specific examples on successful engagement with employers? Maureen, we have the lines, let's see, the lines say they are unmuted. I see a note from Maureen Hellwig, I'm speaking up but no acknowledgement. Okay, so two things, Maureen. One, make sure your own phone line isn't muted, just like your speaker button. And then let me correct myself, just in case, hit *7 to unmute your line. So check your own mute line and then *7, and let's see if we can hear from Maureen Hellwig.
You want to try *7? Can you hear me now?
Yep.
There I'm out.
Okay. Maureen, thank you.
Sorry about that. My only thoughts on the employer engagement, we work with manufacturers and healthcare, and we do it two different ways because of the differences in the sectors. So the healthcare sector, which tends to have a number of local employees, we formed an employer advisory council, and 2 or 3 times a year we invite the employers to a luncheon and talk about how we can work better together, things we need to hear from them, etc. With the manufacturers, who are much more scattered, it's sort of been one by one. As we place someone, we make sure we have a conversation with the employer to get any input on, especially after we place someone, any weaknesses in their training, anything we need to improve on. And of course, we ask them for contacts with other employers. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you. Is there anything that you think that the federal, so that OCTAE could do that would help you to leverage more of those employers? I mean, that might be really disconnected, sort of what the federal government can do, but we're actually looking for any specific ideas of things that might need to change. So I'm wondering if you see any barriers to engaging any of those employers.
Well, the barriers I see, I don't actually think have a lot to do with something the federal government can do. As I said, with manufacturers, part of it is they're scattered over a wide area. Beyond that, I think with healthcare, we're actually looking into right now using OJT in order to encourage them to give workers who have training but no prior experience in the field a chance to get some of that experience with a discounted wage in terms of the employer's position. Yeah. And also that can turn out to be a paid internship, which they need often to sit for various certification exams.
Right.
So I guess you could say OJT could be, one of the ways that employers can be more engaged. It's already out there. It's not a new idea. Perhaps it needs to be expanded.
Right. And is there any way? Are you seeing that as a good incentive with employers that you can offer them that or that idea?
Well, we're just getting into that discussion with the Healthcare Network.
Okay.
We have folks from the Chicago Federation of Labor Worker Assistance Committee who have been successfully using OJT in a few instances, and so they're training our job developers on how to use this. So we're just beginning the experiment.
Great. Great idea. Anybody else have any additional information or examples of your experiences with successfully engaging employers? Okay, if not, I think we will move on to the next poll.
So what I'm going to do, folks, is for this poll, I'm going to go back and mute the lines. When we get to the next conversation, If you have something, you were all very courteous, keeping the background sound to a minimum. I'm going to mute all the lines, and I am corrected. I apologize. It is star 7 to unmute your lines. So when we get to the next discussion,
how would you like to prioritize?
Star 7 to unmute your line, and then star 6 to mute it. I apologize. I had it flipped.
What time is
The conference has been muted.
Okay, so in our next phase of the conversation is about setting priorities. And the reason OVE is asking this question is because they are realizing that the solutions will probably not be one size fits all in terms of the strategies that we'll use for certain demographics. And so the next poll is asking you to rank which population should be prioritized. Will it be immigrants with limited English, young adult high school dropouts, or ex-offenders? You can take the time now to rank your answer.
Okay, so we are testing your patience today with one little technical hiccup. There was a minor glitch with our poll, so please take a minute and in chat send me your number one priority. This was a ranking poll. We understand that this is a difficult answer. We will not include your names when we include the poll because we don't do that before. We just want the content from you. So please send your number 1, your number 2, and your number 3 priority populations. In order, number 1, number 2, number 3, responding to the 3 that we have offered you here, and send them in chat. We'll tabulate your responses, and we will keep them confidential. Okay,
could you list the 3 again, please?
I am more than happy to, and I will also send it in chat. How about, Becky, if you can just the 3 populations, I'm also going to type them in chat.
Okay, so the 3 populations are immigrants with limited English, young adult high school dropouts, or ex-offenders. Thank you. We're getting a lot of great feedback in the chat box here. And just to echo what Mary Kay said, we know this is a very difficult question and that it's really hard to rank, but this is how OVE is driving the conversation, so we want to be able to respond accordingly. I see a lot of great input. Thank you so much. Now that we have so much feedback in the first 3 categories, we'd also like to encourage any categories that you feel are not reflected in our poll. If there is another group that you feel needs a lot of attention, please take a moment and type it in to the chat box so that we can record that as well.
Yeah, I see as people are sending in other populations, I want to thank Megan Wells for flagging the ICIRR is organizing a conversation very similar to this engagement session today, looking through the lens of immigrant populations. She has posted the information in chat, but I'm just going to say it out loud. It's Thursday, March 6th, 1:30 to 3 p.m., Thursday, March 6th, 1:30 to 3 p.m., in the ICIRR Conference Room, 55 East Jackson Boulevard, Suite 2075. Folks can see it in the chat posted by Megan Wells. And we were speaking this morning, as folks send in those other populations, the importance of multiple voices and multiple groups submitting feedback to OCTAE. All signals that we have gotten from the national leaders, including the author of the national plan, is that we have to have very specific examples, materials, and feedback from the front line. And so I just think it's fantastic that we've been able to convene in-person meetings here in Chicago, a statewide perspective through this virtual webinar, that ICIR will all be doing populations. So I'm not sure if anyone else on the line knows of other engagement sessions or opportunities. Feel free to use the chat window, but I think it's fantastic that Illinois will be very well represented to the federal administration in helping to shape this national action plan.
Great. And now, continuing this discussion around setting priorities, we'd like to open up the webinar for a discussion around your specific ideas regarding different populations, to just hear thoughts that you have either around the immigration issue, ex-offender, or high school dropouts that you would like to be held up to the OCTAE for solutions within a specific population. So it's *7 to unmute your phone if you'd like to mention a specific strategy or practice that you have that has been working really well.
Shirley Jenkins, we see that your hand is raised. We would love to hear your input. If you hit *7 on your phone line, you can unmute your line and then please offer your specific ideas.
Hello, am I connected?
You are. It's great to hear you, Shirley. How are you today?
I'm fine, thank you. How are you?
Great.
I wanted to, when you had that other question up, I was trying to put something in the chat box, but when I tried that, it wouldn't, I couldn't enter anything. And I called your Ready guy. In fact, I have him on the line checking something out for me. When you were prioritizing those 3 for immigrants, what were the other 2? I can't remember.
Well, do you want to offer your feedback on the line? One of us will take a note right now, Shirley. The 3 populations from the last question.
It was immigrants, young adult, high school dropout, and ex-offenders. Mm-hmm. And how we would rate that is my first will be a young adult high school dropouts. My number 2 would be ex-offenders, and the third one would be immigrants.
Thank you very much, Shirley. I hope that Ready Talk can solve your chat problem.
Yeah, well, he's still checking into it, but I still can't enter anything into chat. Hello, are you still there?
Yeah, we're still here. And do you have any specific strategies that you would like to share, Shirley, in terms of high school dropouts that have worked at your program?
Well, again, we are located in a church. I think you know that. And a lot of our students come from the members of the church. Their grandchildren, children, godchildren who have dropped out from school, and they refer them to us to help them so they can get back into a program. And so a lot of ours is referral, and also we've reached out to several different organizations, and one is Gateway, who we're working with the program they have on 26 in California. They have a program there where offenders come in and spend the day there. So she called us over there and asked us would we come in and assess some of the students they had there, and now they come to our place to be tutored.
So really working through the networks, the family networks, but also through the partners in your area.
Oh, yeah, we definitely, in our area, and Inglewood area, we get referrals from Team Inglewood. We're getting referrals from them, and then from the library where that's Marshall Library on 74th and Racine. We get a lot of referrals from them, too, because they have students coming into the library wanting to be tutored, so they refer them to us. Because, they used to have a tutoring program years ago in the libraries, but they don't now.
Great. So. Well, thanks so much, Shirley. I appreciate your input.
Oh, that's all right, Becky. You're welcome. I still can't get in the chat, so that's all right.
Well, how about, Shirley, all you need to do is hit *6, and you unmute your line, and then I see Lynn Burkett. Her hand is raised, so Lynn, just please hit *7 and share your specific ideas.
Yeah, I think I'm on. Can you hear me?
I sure can. Thank you.
Okay, great. And again, this isn't new, and it kind of springboards a little bit off what she was just saying, but, what we have found, and we're working mostly with that adult reentering the work, the education and workforce, so not so much the immigrants and not so much the ex-offenders. So in talking about the adults with the low skills, it is just absolutely imperative that you have some staff, whether it's one person or whether it's a team of people, who are basically available for case management. These students have so many issues going on outside of the school, so whether it's financial issues, abuse issues, homelessness, on and on. And what we found very early on is that we couldn't be everything to everybody. And it was really important to, partner up with other resources in our area so that when someone came in crisis, we knew exactly where to send them or have someone come to our location even to help with the situation, because the typical reaction for these students is just to flee. They're gonna, if something happens, and it may seem like a huge crisis to them, and yet to us it's very manageable, but without the skills of knowing how to manage a crisis, their tendency is just to say, I can't do it, I'm gonna have to quit, and they just don't want to show up. And so we have to, the other thing we learned is to let them know up front that all of these resources would be available versus waiting until there was a crisis and then we had to go find them. That was another thing. So.
Oh, great. Yeah, that's really good input. Thanks for sharing that, Lynn.
I also do *6 to unmute, guys?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Lynn. *6 to mute your line. I wanted just to recognize Mickey, who I realize is in a spot, Mickey O'Kearns, where she can't unmute her line, but wanted to thank her. She was offering some points in chat. I just want to make sure folks have seen them on the point of having students who are single mothers as a specific population and the challenges that they face balancing school and work because of the total dearth of 24-hour childcare. Mickey offered that many of the students have difficulties performing in the traditional classroom for various reasons, and she finds that smaller groups or one-on-one is productive, but there's also a lack of trained and qualified tutors that make this difficult in providing this type of intensive instruction. Young adults need help scaffolding not just their education, but their behavior issues as well. And lastly, the point of what kind of scaffolding or supportive services. Clearly, childcare being a priority, but yeah, I definitely hear you. So many of the single moms or other folks in the target populations are working 1 and 2 jobs and not always the straight 9 to 5 as our daycare systems would think.
Mary Kay?
Yeah.
This is Lynn again. And, you know, certainly don't have the answer to that question in whole because there are so many different, you know, issues that are built around childcare. But one thing that we do try to do, and it really is mostly only helpful to our students who have school-age children, but we do try to schedule as much as we possibly can during the time that the child would be in school for those school-age children. So whereas we used to think, well, you know, evening programming would be easiest for most people working during the day, you know, what we really found is most of our people are not working, or if they are, they're working nights and weekends as well, and they really do have those daytime hours more available and their child is in school. So for that population, and again, it's not for everybody, but it does help to kind of know who your cohort's going to be, and we try as best we can to schedule, you know, within that.
Great. Thank you. Okay, let's see. Is there anyone else?
Anyone else want to chime in? Again, it's star 7 to unmute your line. Okay, so the final question in the setting priorities area is, what are your specific ideas for building partnerships with organizations? And Shirley touched on this earlier, but we just want to be sure that we're really capturing all the input on building partnerships with organizations who are already serving the population you're looking to work with. Thoughts on that?
This is Maureen Helwig at Erie. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Sorry, this is the second time, but I did want to address this idea of partnerships. It's something that Erie House and some of our sister organizations have particularly moved forward with in the healthcare sector in forming the Allied Healthcare Career Network. And I think that there's a couple things to think about here. One is that the full spectrum of what our participants need to prepare for the workforce, healthcare, or really anything else, but it's particularly healthcare, begins with adult basic education and ESL. Then there are bridge programs that are needed, and then finally the actual hands-on skills training. So we've tried to get different organizations who are interested in healthcare, who starting with basic adult ed like Association House, moving to bridge programs, this is Chicago Commons Erie House and Instituto, and then partnering with skills providers like the Humboldt Vocational Center of Wright College and the National Latino Education Institute. So I think also what we're seeing is you have to partner across the sectors. I think the days of putting adult ed in one silo and workforce development in another silo need to come to an end. And we need to link up across those sectors. And we also need, I think, to partner across race and ethnic backgrounds to really maximize resources for those populations that the study, of course we already knew this, but that the study underscores are the populations that really need our help.
Oh, great. Thank you. Anyone else have thoughts on building partnerships in this effort? Okay, in that case, we'll record all of this great feedback and move on to the next segment of our conversation around scaling opportunities. Kerry?
Great. So we have another poll. And one of the big issues that OCTAE is looking at is how to get to scale, so they can identify best practices, and then they want to think about how to get to scale, how to expand, how to serve more individuals. So we all know that overall funding is an issue, but they do want some specific ideas about innovative ways to think about that. So this next poll is just a snapshot of activities. So we want to know which of these activities have the potential for Octave to bring to scale to serve more adults. So I think you can select multiple choice. This is also a multiple choice, multiple response opportunity. And please continue to use the chat box if you see if something isn't here on this list that you think they should think about. Please add that. They are especially interested in ideas that use technology or ways to use technology. So if there's something that you have done that has allowed you to serve more individuals or something you think somebody should try, please add that to the chat box. They are also very interested in ideas that, of course, people have that are not their own Octave funding, but might be funds from another resource. So if you have an experience with sort of combining adult ed funding with something else, please add that to the chat box too. Give a couple more minutes, or a couple more seconds. Okay, I think we're going to close the poll and look at the results. Flexibility wins again. Great, that's great. I think the interest in innovation and trying out new things and the confirming that flexibility is an issue is a really important message to send to Octave. Okay, so now we're going to talk about, we're going to try to discuss some of your ideas. So again, this is really about how federal resources for adult learning can be used to leverage other federal, state, or local, or even private resources. And so we'd like to hear if people have specific examples of something that they've done to fill a gap or provide support services or increase the number of people that they've been able to serve by kind of leveraging the federal funding that they get or combining different sources of funding even if you don't receive the federal funding. So does anybody have a specific example of how they've done something, especially if it's an example that really shows why we need more flexibility or we need funding incentives to innovate? And again, to unmute your line, it's *7. I know there's lots of examples out there, especially around, so Maureen did raise the issue of using OJT, but I wonder if there's other examples of providing work experience or support services using funding that isn't adult ed.
Well, I wonder, this is Lynn Burkett again at Lincoln Land, and I feel bad because I'm actually not going to tell you that I have something that is more flexible than AE funds, and I think that's where the frustration falls and why I chose the flexibility in funding. There is other funding available to support this type of programming, and we tap into one in specific. It's a block grant that's done through our Sangamon County Community Resources here, and it's been just fantastic in paying for tuition for students that we've had in our Bridge and AO programming as an accelerating opportunity college. And without that, we would not have been able to serve nearly as many students. However, it in itself is almost, more, well, it's less flexible even than my adult ed funding. The people I served had to live in a specific area of the county. They had to fit a specific income, guideline. They had, there were several things, and where I might have had 5 or 6 students in my program that, live in Springfield that would have done well with this programming, they didn't fit into their box of I'm losing my words. Sorry. into who they could serve.
Yeah, their
with
boundaries
money.
or their requirements.
And so, my money cut off a certain level of people, and their money cut off an even more level of people. So then you get down to this very small population of who you could serve when there were so many others in the area that if it had all been more flexible, it would just have been a lot easier. So I'm afraid that I'm not giving you a specific example of one that we've used that was more flexible, but I think what you're going to find is that more people are in this boat where we can tap into other monies, but it is not flexible.
Well, I think that's a very good point, Lynn, and thank you for mentioning. I mean, you did offer something specific with the Community Development Block Grant as a specific funding stream. You also mentioned that your college is part of the Accelerating Opportunity Initiative, which is really testing some nationally recognized models that blend adult education with college credit, career and technical education model, so an integrated model or an integrated bridge, if you will. I wonder if there's anyone else on the line who is either an Accelerating Opportunity site or has had other experience tapping other funding streams. I've had the opportunity to sit in on a few of the AO meetings and have heard lots of really creative ideas, everything from, tuition waivers to college foundations, local community foundations, so philanthropic dollars, a blend of private and public funds. So I'm wondering if there's anyone else that has either had an experience, either under the banner of an initiative or just using your local resources. Please push *7 to offer your specific examples. I also see Lisa in chat offered a comment about adult education funding along with City College's funding, specifically for their College to Careers program. I don't know, Lisa, if you're in a spot where you could hit *7 and say any more about how you're blending those funding streams. Oh, you're in the car. Okay, keep driving, hands on the wheel.
Okay, I think we're going to move on to the next discussion topic. But
so Ann Darton from City Colleges just offered a point in chat, able to leverage tuition waivers for bridge and gateway transition programs. Ann, are you in a position where you can unmute your line using *7 to say any more about that?
Hi, does this work?
It sure does. Yeah, we can hear you. Thank you, Ann.
Oh, great. Thanks very much. I'm actually sitting in a room with a dozen of us participating, and we decided to volunteer the fact that we have 2 transition programs that are able to use general college funds for tuition waivers. One of the programs is our Gateway program that serves students at the upper levels of ESL and GED who are at the point of transition so that they can begin to take some college courses while they're still in adult ed. And as of this current semester, we've also begun to incorporate certain college credit courses into the upper levels of our Bridge program. So we're very fortunate in being able to leverage those funds, we feel.
Thank you, Ann. Is there anybody else who has any other examples that they want to get on the record before we move to the next discussion question? I also just want to reiterate that I think that was an excellent point about combining funding, but that also combines limitations of the individual funding streams. Because blending funding and combining funding is something that we are always encouraged to do by leaders in the administration or policymakers, but it sounds like in some cases narrows the population that you can serve, which is the exact opposite, I think, of what this report is hoping that we can find some solutions to. So now we're going to move on to the next discussion question.
And let me just, a quick housekeeping, Ann and City College friends, if you can just hit *6 to to mute your line. We definitely want to hear your feedback on this next topic, but just until we introduce it. Thank you very much.
Okay, so the final discussion point, improving the quality of instruction, does not start with a poll. We'll just dive right into the conversation. And I think this is such an exciting opportunity for us to give feedback to the federal government on how this could be improved. We're looking for what specific tools, support, and professional working conditions are necessary for teachers to develop a world-class adult education workforce. So what ideas do you have, what success stories, what has really helped in terms of creating the conditions where providers are ready to serve students and make sure that they are meeting benchmarks to be college and career ready? I'll open it up now for comments. And again, you can *7 to unmute your line.
Hi, this is Ann Darnton again. Can you hear me?
Yep, great. Thanks, Ann.
Okay, great. We would like to talk about a couple of things, and hopefully I can get some of my colleagues to jump in and share this conversation with me. But one of the things that City Colleges has done of late is to invest a tremendous amount of resources into professional development for instructors. We believe that we have a lot of good instructors out there, but we think that with some additional support from us, they can become world-class instructors. So my colleagues, Steve Hines and Anita Kara, are doing a great deal of professional development, both with cohorts of teachers over time and also standalone sessions. I'll ask them to just say a couple words in a minute, but I also want to add that in addition to that, we've embarked on a major project with assessment of our students, both in reading, writing, listening, and speaking on both the ABE, GED side and the ESL side, and I think I could get Mark Batista to say a couple words about that. So, Anita and Steve, do you want to say something first?
Sure, I'm Steve Hines, and I'm a mathematics professional and curriculum developer here at the City Colleges. And I've been involved for about a decade in professional development projects trying to improve math instruction in adult literacy programs here and in other states. And my advice to OCTE would be that they support projects and programs that have what I would call a comprehensive approach to improving instruction. What usually happens when people try to improve instruction is that they will come out with a new curricula, or they will come out with some professional development workshops, or they will do some workshops on new standards that are around, or workshops on college transition. But oftentimes there is not what I would call the knitting together of all these things in one, which means you can't give out curricula to teachers and hope that they're going to be able to use rich curricula without linked, extensive, intensive, over time professional development. And you need to work with the program's administrative forces to make sure that the teachers have the support to implement the curricula in the classrooms, whether that involves making sure they have the supplies they need, or the learning environments that they need, or finding the appropriate students. So I think that at the City Colleges we're engaged in that right now, trying to really knit together PD and curricula that are well written and program support to make sure that the teachers are able to put their new learning into practice. And the projects that focus generally on one of these things, like handing out a new curricula, tend to be much less impactful on teachers and teaching.
Anita, anything to add?
Sure. I'm Anita Kara. I think that I agree with what Steve said. In addition, I think that the curricula and the professional development that we offer needs to be focused on really educating students, not just preparing them to pass tests. I think, our field has long been thought of as kind of a part-time, just catch-up quick field. as opposed to really providing students with a lot of the education that they may have missed previously. And so, so I think, and this is my personal opinion, but I think it's what we want to develop a world-class adult ed workforce, then teachers need to have conditions where they can come into adult education as a career, and they can have full-time jobs with benefits. Similar to the K-12 system. I think that it's crucial in developing a workforce that's going to stick around and invest and want to be invested in their own development.
Thanks to both of you. This is Anne again. Before I ask Mark to talk about assessment, I just want to make the point that we all know, those of us on the line who are ICCB-funded adult education providers, know very well the importance of the federally approved standardized tests that we're required to use, but we want to think a little bit beyond those tests. Those tests don't measure all the learning that our students are undergoing and can't be expected to. So to address this issue, we decided to create our own assessments that are related to the curriculum itself, and I'd like Mark to speak a little bit about those.
This is Mark Batista. These assessments we've been working on for about a year now. We really started for reading and writing on both the ABE side of the camp and the ESL. We started at College 101 to see what students needed to be successful in College 101, and in turn took our curriculum and worked backwards to address, what those outcomes are needed at each level. And in turn, we've developed a set of assessments that would determine if students are ready to move from one level to the next. And this is an attempt, one, to make sure that students are ready for 101, but also so that it gave the colleges across the district a better, and the teachers there, and a better idea of what's necessary at each level and where students should be at the end of a particular NRS level.
And hi everyone, my name is Valerie. I also work with City Colleges. There's another area that we have over recent years become quite critically aware of, which is that the standardized tests, the approved standardized tests that we use we're finding that there's a gap between the exit levels of those tests and what is required for our students to know in order to enter college. And what that means is that we have, therefore, students who exit out of, let's say, the CASAS test for ESL, and yet they are not yet ready for college, which is also one of the goals of many adult ed programs now. But that creates a gap in terms of what we're able to, in terms of the funding. And I don't know if someone else wants to join in. Did that make sense?
That there's a gap between where the adult ed assessment leaves off and where the post-secondary compass assessments start off.
Yes.
And where college readiness
begins.
And where college readiness.
Yeah, so for example, our more advanced ESL students, they exit out of the CASAS test, but then we kind of struggle with, okay, how do we help support this aspect of our program? Because much of our funding is related to those to the level gains and the testing.
Right. Mm-hmm. That's great. Thank you, Valerie.
So I've been getting all kinds of great chatter in the chat window. I want to ask Maureen Helwig. There's a few folks in the queue that have made comments. So Maureen mentioned agreeing with the professionalization of the field. And your point, Maureen, when you're ready, you could unmute your line. In City Colleges, you can mute your line, *6. And feel free, City Colleges, if there's any other input, just, unmute again. But Maureen, in the meantime, *7, you made a comment that instructional developments can be more cost-effective than training for one organization at a time. I'd like you to comment on that, and then I'm going to be going through chat and calling on a few other folks here in a minute.
It's Maureen. Can you hear me?
We sure can.
Okay. Yeah, this is, again, something that we've enjoyed with our Allied Healthcare Career Network, is that particularly we've been working recently on developing the soft skills portion of our curricula for our healthcare bridge. And we can hire a consultant then that can do a training for all the member organizations of the network at one time. And the resources that the network has are paying for that training. I think that overall, while I know that ICCB always has a requirement for staff development dollars, I think probably most groups would agree it's really not enough considering the kind of overall development that we need to have ongoing when we all want to. You first have to prioritize our resources to pay our instructors and keep other aspects of the program going. So, as I said, private funds for consultants seems to work. I wish there were more government dollars for that. And sharing among groups. Now, I don't think you can just offer one training, one size fits all. But if you have organizations that are already working together in a particular sector, then it can be useful to bring in one consultant to train everyone.
Great. Thanks, Maureen.
Sure.
One of the other people, so just *6 to mute. Megan Wells, if you could click *7, you've offered a couple different points. Why don't you unmute your line and join the conversation?
Sure. Can you hear me?
I can. And would
Great.
you just take a minute to just say where you're from? I know some folks have done that in their introductions. It just kind of helps us place where you are in the statewide conversation.
Sure. I'm Megan Wells, the Program Director of Literacy Works. And we provide trainings for adult literacy tutors. And in fact, I was thinking about Nikki's comment about how to find quality volunteer tutors. I think that's a great conversation to have. Particularly, I just wanted to mention about Anita's points that I feel like the professional development that's been provided to adult education instructors thus far has been very prescriptive, such as evidence-based reading, direct instruction, and I feel that I'm very interested in what the City Colleges is doing in terms of broadening that range, that flexibility that's customized to each learning community. What are the students' strengths, cultures, resources that can be integrated back into the curricula?
Thank you, Megan. I want to make sure I offer a point. I believe Pat Thomas is in a spot where she can't unmute. I'm going back to the, as they say, roll the tape. Pat said, to add to the conversation on innovative ideas, we have found success in utilizing online content to prepare folks to enter into integrated instruction rather than seat-based pre-training. Within content, students required are components offered through our workforce and adult literacy content available through our program. It allows students to complete content within their own time frame. Our technical college is now considering encouraging fee-based students to utilize this content as well as through the adult basic education program. And I wanted to flag that. I believe not everybody can see what's happening in chat. As I said, we'll share the transcript. But for the sake of stimulating conversation, I believe Kerry mentioned it earlier and we wanted to emphasize it, we're really getting the signal from OCTAE clearly in an interest in technology as one way of supporting instruction and scaling opportunities. So I wanted to offer Pat's comments to see if anyone else had specific examples, tools, or resources that you would like to discuss today, and then you could even send us links of flyers, portals, websites, whatever the version of technology you're using with students, and we would be happy to include those specific examples when we submit our feedback to OCTAE here in the next week or so. If there's anyone else that wants to comment on how you're using technology, please hit *7 to unmute your line. Is there anybody else that wants to say a comment about the use of technology?
Hi, this is Ann Darchin, but actually my colleague Max Wageman has a few words about the use of technology.
Hi, everyone. One of the things that we've done at Wright is to embed computer time into all of our classes. And we realized with the GED being online, not giving our students that time to learn how to do a task on a computer puts them behind the 8 ball and they have to go take the assessment. One of the things we're encouraging our instructors to do is to give the writing topic before they arrive at the lab so the students can begin writing when they're in the lab. Now, some classes have 40 minutes, 45 minutes. It depends on the length of the class and the date. And we find that that's enough time to see what additional instruction students need. Our faculty have been telling students who want to take the GED, minimum typing should be 35 words a minute so that they're not looking for the A and the S. With our ESL classes, we're also doing the same. Again, we begin at the lowest level so that technology is not sprung on them at the higher levels. We believe in embedding that, and we're seeing really good results. We're also using online curricula such as USA Learns, English Central, some writing websites and reading websites like Penzu and Reading Theory, and we're getting really good results. So I think if you can afford it, you need to make technology part of your instructional plan. If you can't, you need to find a partner. Chicago libraries have cyber navigators. You have to go to each library and see when the cyber navigator is there. These are folks who give tutorials on how to use computer software, get an email. They're a great resource, and you should partner with your cyber navigator if you are unable to do that at your site. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think a couple things we heard is embedding technology into instruction. I also heard a mention of distance learning. So I just want to flag both of those conversation topics if anybody else wants to add. And again, if you do have specific tools, resources, websites, send us the information or the link.
Okay. Great then.
Okay.
Thanks so much for everyone's good points. And again, if you have any follow-up comments, please feel free to share them.
Okay. So I just want to say thank you to everybody that logged on today and joined this virtual engagement session. It's been a really interesting conversation. We've had clearly a lot of folks, both from the Chicagoland area as well as all across the state. So we really will be able to say with confidence that we are submitting a statewide perspective when we submit the feedback to OCTAE. So as we mentioned at the beginning of the session, we, Women Employed, Chicago Jobs Council, and the Citywide Literacy Coalition participated in an engagement session with the Department of Education at the end of last year. It was by them soliciting local groups to tap into the local conversation, to dig deeper and get the perspective from the front line that we decided to run 2 sessions. At the beginning of this month, we hosted an in-person session with approximately 30 people in the room at a CJC working group meeting, had small groups, and we've transcribed those notes and we'll synthesize them into written feedback. We're going to take today's recording, blend it with the CJC small group conversations, as well as keep the recording, the slides, and the transcript. We're going to put that together into a package that we will submit to OCTAE by March 14th. That is their deadline. Fortunately, their time is moving very quickly. I mean, they have a great investment in producing the National Action Plan and releasing it this spring. So we're going to be on the lookout for the National Action Plan April, May. We're also going to be paying very close attention as we analyze and synthesize the content from all of you for local and state advocacy opportunities. And based on your feedback, the examples that you're providing, the models that you're flagging for us, we will definitely re-engage with you and figure out what kind of advocacy opportunities there are for us as partners here in Chicago and Illinois. I want to flag just a couple last resources before we log off today. There have been lots of ink spilled coming out of the survey results and the OECD report, and we just wanted to flag 2 resources that we think could really help the people in today's meeting. One, this is a snapshot of a 1-page infographic on the state of Illinois and adult education. It's a really incredible front-back resource, and we wanted to flag it for you. The website is linked here on the slide that you can use in your own reports, funding proposals, materials, setting conversations with internal to your organizations, other partners, but lots of meaty information here on the state of Illinois adult education. The other is a national resource from PIAC. It's a gateway portal, and I'll just quickly flag there's reports, events, activities, research papers, and a series of infographics. So again, I strongly encourage you, how do you make this story visual for partners and funders and leaders, and taking a look at some of those resources. So finally, we hope that you'll stay on the line and that you will respond to our 3-question survey at the end. Again, this will be your feedback on what specific resources and materials you want to share with OCTAE, and we'll follow up to collect them from you and submit them to the feds before the March 14th deadline. Okay, thanks everybody, and have a great day.
Thank you. Please stand by.